Welcome to Y11 Audio. I'm Alex Alvarado. Thank you for listening. We're going to continue with previews weeks, day 2 of it, week 1, day 2 of it. Yesterday we talked about quarterbacks. Today it's the offensive line's turn. The biggest position group, of course, by size of people and size of roster size. How many people are in this group? A lot. That's what it takes. There's 5 of them there on the field at one time. Obviously, I've never seen a fully healthy offensive line in my life on any team because that's just the way the sport's played. Everybody's going to be having nagging injuries. Some guys are going to be standing tall, going up against these, quick twitchers that are 250 pounds, or maybe they're giant bulldozers at 325, somewhere in between. These are the guys that have to do the work that don't always end up in the stat sheet. There are stats where we can interpret how the offensive line's played and other parts around it, of course. It always starts up front, of course. It always starts up front. And yesterday we started with the quarterback. But today, it's the O-line. It's going to be a different looking group. And that's usually the case year in and year out. But really, when you go back and look through, the time machine of, what did these offensive lines look like? I went back and drew up the offensive line starting-wise since 2018. And, this is the most, unrecognizable bunch. Not to say that these aren't guys that haven't been in the system for a while, at least in a number of years. But this is not the team that has the 2 guys, Sidy Sow and Brian Dooley, who both graduated in each of the last couple of seasons. Those are the 2 men who, more than anybody else in the history of Eastern Michigan football, has played more downs, more games of Eastern Michigan football than those 2. Nobody. You can't top them. They ruled the leaderboards of most games played, most starts had. Brian Dooley coming in first place. Sidy Sow, when he graduated, he eventually became a 4th-round pick with the New England Patriots. He's got a lot of playing time with them, started some games. Brian Dooley, he's working his way there. Wasn't a draft pick, but, still incredibly dedicated to the game. Those 2 helped define the offensive lines in the past. So did Mike Van Hoeven. Van Hoeven didn't make it into the NFL, but started for 3 years at center previously. Then you got to remember there was Marcellus Johnson, who could have returned for his 4th year last season, 4th year as a starter, had he not transferred to Missouri at the time. And there is also coming into the 2022 season where Jake Donelon, who was this reliable kind of swing guard, he would have been able to help out up front at one of the 2 left or right guard positions. Probably would have been right guard heading into 2022. And so you got to remember 2022, even though it had Dooley and Sow still, center was still kind of an issue. And it was going to be, obviously like the last year of Johnson at left tackle, and then at guard, we're breaking in Alex Howie and Mickey Rewolinski, who is now a starter on the left side of the line, right? Bake them in. Center was, it was fine. Richard Bates had an okay year after he came in for Dimitri Douglas, who had a super early injury, but wasn't particularly amazing for it. 2023 rolls around. You don't have Johnson. You still have Dooley, and it's your first year without Sow. Center is kind of up in the air because Bates graduated, but Dimitri Douglas, is he finally ready? There was a lot of hype around him at the time after the Quick Lane Bowl when he announced his commitment to the program. Coming in from Michigan State, okay, that should give you some good push. Alex Howie on the right side, right next to Brian Dooley. They're actually a reliable fist on the right side of the line. I know we usually categorize it for the left, which is how I'm gonna phrase 2024 when we get to that. But there is still a lot of kind of newer pieces coming into the fold, right? Mickey Rewolinski, maybe he had to get more up to speed than he probably realistically should have been. Not to say that he was at all bad last year, but maybe if Eastern's thinking greedily and transfer portal didn't hit them as hard. Maybe he could have been just a backup to like develop a little bit more and be just a little bit more fresh coming into this season, right? But I'm not surprised that he finally got his minutes last year on the left side of the line. But then going into 2023, right? I already talked about the right side of the line being a fist. Mika Rewolinski, he's kind of, even though he's had some playing time on the right side of the line, swing him to left tackle, right? Let's just go straight there. Chris Mayo, who was coming in from West Virginia, at the time, like one of the biggest transfers in terms of his recruiting grade out of high school for anybody, right? His was higher at the time when he transferred in. Eastern Michigan had never let anybody through the door. I shouldn't say it like that, but Eastern Michigan had never admitted anybody who had as high as a grade of him out of high school, right? Looking at his 24/7 composite scores. But still, he wasn't 100% healthy, and just like any good offensive line, it takes more than, some weeks, some months to get into it. Still, he was a guy that you did want to see, but whatever underlying injuries that he had that isn't totally public, didn't want him on his feet that much, right? Which is when we get to Zach Conte. Zach Conte, who, was a former walk-on, didn't get his scholarship until Brian Dooley, who said, hey, I've been here looking at the record books long enough. I think I can give up 1 year of my scholarship to help my friend out whose family was going through some stuff. His mom obviously had some health troubles that he had to help be around and support with his summer jobs and whatnot. And then obviously giving the scholarship just eased a lot of their financial burdens so he could continue to play football. He has since transferred out at the end of the year. If I'm not mistaken, he went to Southern Miss. I'm not going to look it up right now. But he's gone. And then Dan Sunderman, who was a backup, was going to be kind of that 6th, 7th, 8th man in the rotation, hopefully. Didn't play too much. Got I think he started once or maybe twice. A guy who was a Division III player and worked his way up for a grad transfer year. Now this offensive line is graduated. Brian Dooley, the only right tackle you've seen in the post-COVID era. Actually, Brian Dooley's been starting at right tackle since before COVID. Brian Dooley has been Eastern Michigan's right tackle starter since 2019. Think about that. That obviously helps a lot in terms of development, getting guys like Joshua Anderson or Mac Endestad, guys like them who were younger, obviously developing, trying to get as much knowledge as they could, to hang out in the system, stay on their feet on the sidelines if they can, and let Brian Dooley just do his thing, right? Let him be the leader that he was born to be. But he's out, which means we're going to see a new face at right tackle. I think the left side of the line we're going to have, and I'm going to give you a best case scenario, right? I'm going to give you a best case scenario of a starting five later, right? But just kind of getting into it, prognosticating a little bit. The right side, Brian Dooley, he's gone. Alex Howie, he graduated. Already mentioned Dan Sunderman's name. He graduated. And then at center last year was just a huge mess. I know I talked about how the quarterback play just wasn't there. Austin Smith didn't exactly play, the year totally healthy, right? Had to come into the Western Michigan game, one of those few games where Ikudengu started. Ikudengu got poked in the eye, and then Austin Smith, who wasn't really able to practice all week at that time, had to go in and finish the game, and wasn't a great finish, right? That was really, really disheartening. Just a very silent, for one side, rivalry appearance. Wasn't very fun. Center didn't have any more luck than that. Center, we ran through 3 starters. Dimitri Douglas, the guy who's being hyped up about so much, he started the year, got injured. Broderick Roman, who in-state guy as well, has been battling injuries his entire college career. He finally got to start for a few games until he was, too hurt to play anymore. Then Carson Lee, at the time second-year transfer from Colorado, he got to start the last half of the year. Held up. He held up, all right? He didn't get carted off, but, it's not a great sign when... Sorry about that. It's not a great sign when you're at any position and you're knocked down to the third stringer because of health, let alone center, right? I don't know if there's like a correct position to like have some like bad luck injury wise at. Center is not that correct answer. Whatever the answer is, center is not that answer, man. They have way too much responsibility, and it kind of just all of that just kind of just like shows in the stats. Of course, on the left side, just kind of continuing. Rewolinski and Chris Mayo, they both played and started at left tackle. Rewolinski missed like a couple games to injury, but ended up finishing the year strong. Chris Mayo played a little bit too. And then left guard, Conti and Sunderman, they're both gone. Conti transferred out. So we're leaving Brian Dooley, Zach Conti, Dimitri Douglas, and Alex Howie. And then we'll throw Dan Sunderman's name in there. 5 guys that had starts, 2 definitely everydayers, and Dimitri Douglas, who was the season starter at center post Mike Van Hoven's graduation in 2021. Douglas got some starts over the last couple of years, kind of hurt by injuries though. So we're seeing a new right side, a very new right side, right? A hopefully, knock on wood, more stable kind of group of guys at center. Like, we are just praying that there's enough flex seal on the sidelines to keep these guys up throughout the season. And then on the left side, assuming that Chris Mayo and Mickey Rewolinski are like the 2 leaders physically and age-wise, if they're strong enough to hold down the left side, that's a good left side to have. But it's time for Eastern Michigan to be proud of its development curve, to really show out, the guys that it was able to recruit out of high school since COVID and see what they're able to do. Guys like Mayo, Rewolinski, Roman, who have, been playing since like before or like right at that COVID time, right? Now it's their time to shine. And then we're going to see some new names on the right side too. Just kind of looking at the rest of the list of this roster. 2 more departures I didn't really mention. Kellen McDonough, he was McDonough. He was one of like the bigger transfers out of high school. I shouldn't say transfers out of high school. That doesn't make any sense. One of the biggest commits in Eastern Michigan history, straight out of high school into college. He's transferred out. So is Trenton Van Beining. Both of them, I believe, are at the FCS level now. Mickey Rewolinski is the only returning true starter back, somebody who started week 1 of last season and is expected to start and play again this year. Mickey Rewolinski is the only name back. Everybody else has been guys that either found time, didn't have any time at all last year, or played until they couldn't play anymore. One of those, of course, Broderick Roman. Like I said, he's been around since 2019. Didn't play his first year. Okay. 5 games in the COVID year. Cool. Didn't play in 21. Didn't play in 22. And then had 6 games, 2 starts. But then he was out for the year in 23. Like I said, there's Carson Lee, who transferred from Colorado a couple years ago. Chris Mayo, who transferred from West Virginia a couple of years ago. A few guys that did play last year didn't start at all. Josh Anderson over on right tackle, he was only in for like a couple of minutes when like Brian Dooley had to like tape his hand or something like that. Daniel Warrensman, somebody who's listed on the 2 deep as a starter at right guard. He could be an option, Ohio native. And then there's Owen Snively, a Colorado State transfer from a few years ago, 2-3 years ago, I don't remember. And then a bunch of guys that didn't play last year. Most of them our class of 2022 preferred walk-ons. Then there's Terrence Saunders and Mac Indestad, who came into Eastern from the 2023 and 2022 recruiting classes, respectively. Mac Indestad is a guy that I want to circle very, very quickly because Chris Creighton's mentioned him in interviews before, saying like, yeah, this is a guy that we saw as someone who could have played as a redshirt freshman, but had he not had a hand injury, we didn't get to call his number at all in 2023. That's me saying, hey, it's a hand injury, man. Like I'm more optimistic about guys coming back from that at that position than like a high ankle sprain or like a knee injury, whatever, bro. Like that is reboundable if he's able to like put it all together at his now redshirt sophomore year, right? Like that'd be really good. Some new guys to think about. Let's start with the transfers. Because these are guys that at least two of the four of these that I have listed here, I could see getting some playing time right away. Let's start with the two that I plan on seeing this year. Blake Bustard, guy from Muskegon, guy who transferred from Division II Wayne State in Detroit. He went to Mona Shores, the same high school that, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on his name already. Is it, oh, no. Is it Tyree Jackson? Yeah, Tyree Jackson went to, if you don't know who Tyree Jackson is, go have some fun on YouTube. But Blake Bustard played in 24 games, had 19 starts at both right tackle and left tackle over each of the last couple of years. So he's got plenty of experience. Would not be surprised if he added some depth, especially to that right side, if Chris Mayo and Mickey Rewolinski are going to be that left-sided fist. Mac Indestad, like I said, he's going to be somebody who I circle as like guy who's been around long enough, and youngster I wouldn't be surprised to see starting at right tackle if he's as good as he's been advertised by the coaching staff. But Blake Bustard's also the guy where like, hey man, like that's the immediate competition in my eyes, assuming he's healthy and all that stuff. All these conversations, right, are assuming that health isn't a nagging factor. Logan Bednar, he is the most unique transfer of this class in terms of like the two American schools that he spent most of his time at. Transfer from Harvard. When's the last time you've seen that? St. John Bosco High School graduate. When's the last time you've seen either of those types of players come into Eastern Michigan? The Harvard of the Midwest, as they say. The St. John Bosco High School of the 734 area code. I'm kidding. But Logan Bednar, guy who graduated high school in 2020, was a 3-star guard out of St. John Bosco. He actually started out at a different high school his freshman year, did well there, and then played 3 years at St. John Bosco. If you don't know about St. John Bosco, go have some fun looking it up. But let me tell you really quickly, his first couple of years, he helped them get to, not their first time, of course, but a high national ranking. And then by the time his senior year rolled around, he helped St. John Bosco reach a national championship victory. By the time he was for them, senior with Harvard, guess what he helped them do? Win an Ivy League title. So, he's a guy who didn't play in 2020, obviously, because Ivy League canceled the season. Didn't play in 21 because he was still new. Had 5 games played in 22, 10 starts in 23. Wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy that, came in and started competing for the right guard spots. So if we're keeping up right now, a presumptive starting 5 could be from left to right: Mayo, Rewolinski, Roman. And if it's not either of the freshmen and it's the 2 transfers that I just talked about, then we're saying maybe Logan Bednar at right guard and then Blake Bustard at right tackle. That's pretty good. All right. Assuming that they're as good as advertised. There's Jack Story, who is a class of 2023 high school graduate from Brighton. Originally signed to play D2 ball at Grand Valley. Ended up at D3 Hope on the west side of the state. Played a bunch immediately. Played 9 games as a true freshman, and now he's here in Ypsilanti. Obviously, he's a long-term piece, but is somebody that definitely adds some depth. Definitely already comes in with some experience, so he's not a freshman who's going through the motions, developing, and then wondering what all these new tools he's learning about on the sidelines looks like on the field. He's somebody who, already has some college memories of being on the field and is like, okay, now how can I develop to right my previous wrongs? Because I already got a little bit of taste of what it was like to play after high school. Shouts out to the MIAA, the oldest conference in college sports. Doji Dawe is the actually unique guy who has been educated in 3 different places, like places as in 3 different continents: West Africa, France, and Washington, D.C. Those aren't 3 continents, but they are on 3 different continents. He has some very, very educated parents who have really, really good jobs, and they, traveled around a lot. Went to Washington, D.C. during some of his formative years, went back and graduated overseas. And then by the time, he said his sister was older than him, and I believe she went back to the States first for college. And he was like, you know what? I did like my Washington, D.C. experience. I, too, and want to go back to the States. Ended up going to Santa Rosa Junior College. Was just a student in 2021. Doji Dawe, I need to tell you what he's listed at height and weight-wise. 6'9", 312 pounds. Pause for effect. This 6'9", 300-plus pound freak was just hooping. I'm sure he wasn't 300 pounds at the time. I'm sure he wasn't training to be an offensive lineman before he had heard of football, because in 21, when he was just a student in junior college, he was just hooping outside, hanging out. Some dudes named Beefcake and Big Blocker were walking around, hanging out at their junior college campus, and they're like, who is that guy? Why are you not playing with us? Wait, what are you doing over there? Went up to him, said, what are you doing on this basketball court? Are you playing on the team? No. Okay. Have you ever heard of football? What? Okay, you'd be really good at it. You're going to try out with us. We're your new friends. My name is Beefcake. What's yours? Doji? Okay. Unique. Come play football with us. 2022 rolls around. He tries playing football. They were like, hey, you know what you should do? 2 things. You should play tight end. You should block and catch passes because you're huge. Obviously, you got to try it out, see what it looks like. Was the team's freshman of the year. Didn't really play too much. Just kind of like learning the basics and like amazing everybody at just like simply being huge. 2023 rolls around. They're like, you know what you should do? 1 thing. You should go to offensive line. Don't worry about catching the passes. Just do the 1 thing. Be as big as you are. Ended up doing really well for himself there. Was an all-conference player. And EMU, looked around, looked at the junior colleges, checked out what was in California, saw this man, and was like, come here. Come here, baby. Come here. He's a guy that Creighton has been talking about a lot, just like already. How could you not when you have somebody who's like, I don't know, 6'9", entering the fold? Could be a huge impact if it all pans out. Is a really smart guy, so I'm assuming that his coachability is going to be there. He's a guy I remember asking him, because I had 1 phone conversation with him, and I remember asking him like, so you've never played the sport before, and the thing that we love about it is that it is physical, and the people that play it are attracted to it. And his introduction to it was junior college. And junior college in this country, I don't know how much I have to explain to you people that are listening to this football podcast, but junior college is different. It is not as traditional of a runway as, like, you know, recruit out of high school, come here, learn your stance, lift some weights better, blah, 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 blah. And then let's see how you look as a football player on the other side. Junior college is a different size vacuum where it takes guys who, you know, maybe didn't do so well out of high school athletically, maybe didn't do so well out of high school grades-wise, maybe didn't do so well at their first college stop, playing time, maybe didn't do so well at their first college stop, got in trouble. There's a whole bunch of just different reasons why you're in junior college. For him, it's because he just wanted to, like, you know, get a job one day, right? Have that, like, security blanket of money. But now, like, he is making a name for himself. He's doing something that, like, his family hasn't like indoctrinated him on, right? They didn't like, you know, show him like Steelers and Lions games and all that stuff growing up, right? He's coming into the sport for his own love of it. He loves the physicality of it. He loves just the camaraderie that comes with it. There's so much more excitement that he said that he enjoys out of it that he didn't know ever existed. So, hey, man, like, I don't know, man. It'll be really, really, really fun to watch and see what sort of lineman he can become because he's 6'9". Class of 2024, three guys just to like mention really quickly: Nicholas Sotheby, Andrew Steger, Everett Small from Michigan, Ohio, and the Great White North of Canada, respectively. Small is an early enrollee. He's already been in the spring game. I think I saw him like take some reps with the ones in the spring game too, so that's pretty interesting. Obviously, City Sawa is going to be a huge inspiration for him, as if he hasn't already been already, you know, coming into this. So will he play right away? I don't know, man. Like, it'd be cool to see. It'd be nice to know that he's like physical enough to, you know, compete with the ones and twos to be like quote unquote above the line, as his coaching staff would say. They don't put guys on the field that aren't above the line. But if Everett Small is like at the line, that's a very good start for, you know, for a freshman to be at, especially when we're talking about breaking in guys who are in their like redshirt sophomore years on the right side of the line this year. Maybe doesn't really matter if he'll end up being the starter right away or like starting in some games. If he does end up starting in some games, it might be because of like some injuries around him. So I don't know how much of a major impact any of these new guys are going to have on this line. Obviously, we're going to need something, right? Let me just look at a few stats here just to tell you like how down last year's offense was. We're only going to look at 4 stats. We're not going to get crazy, and we're only going to date it back to 2021 through last year. Looking at scores, like average scoring, points per play, EMU was at 30.2 in 2021. That's a high mark. It's definitely a high mark. This is not an offense that usually wins games in the 30s. 29.8 and 22. All right, that's fine. Then 19.5 last year. Yards per play went from 5.45 in 21, 5.3 last year, 4.3 last year. 5.3 in 22, 4.3 last year. Rushing average stayed generally the same. It wasn't too much of a drop-off. Like, drop-off on the whole, sure. Drop-off on total yards, rushing yards per game. All that's definitely true. But per rush, 3.39 in 21, 3.6 in 22, and then 3.36 last year. Now, this last one is the one I actually care about. It's tackles for loss percentage. How many tackles for loss did you allow per plays ran, right? What percentage of your plays ran ended up in allowing a tackle for loss? 9.56 in 21, 9.05 in 2022, 11% in 2023. So for every 10 plays ran, one of them was going to be a tackle for loss against you. That's not good. And that has to do with, the two biggest offenders, I think, are one, the quarterback play, and then two, probably more obviously, is just like the health uncertainty at center and how much that just kind of like creeping throughout the rest of the line. I think those are the two leading factors there. Now, the quarterback play, the guys that we talked about in yesterday's episode, they're going to be the ones that have to figure that out. But the guys up front are going to have to figure out, hey, how do we stay on the field as safely as possible? How do we not have the bad injury luck? And that's me saying good luck with you on that. Because it doesn't seem like anybody really has like the secret formula for that. But this offensive line, what do you guys think? Is this going to be the real starting five from left to right? Will it be Mayo, Rewolinski, Roman, and like Bednar, Bustard, right? Could that be it? Is it going to be guys that have been waiting in the wings for a while that's going to get more playing time than those transfers, Warnsman and Indestad? Will Everett Small be a big surprise? Sorry for the pun. But will he be a huge surprise for the offensive line as a true freshman? And Mac Indestad, hey, honestly, for as much praise as he's been receiving from the coaching staff, I just want to know if he's as good as advertised. There's a lot of guys to point to and circle, but him, I'm just like, all right, what is it? What is it? Of course, we want some of the seniors to show through, but Mac Indestad is a guy who, if he's like a major hit, he is a huge part. He's a huge, important piece of the puzzles moving forward. And so that's why I'm so interested in that. Yeah, but I think that will wrap up the offensive line preview tomorrow. Some skinny guys.